Hey guys, I welcome everyone to Sriram Sayas. Welcome to the series News in Shots. In this series, we cover all important news related to UPSC in a very short and crisp manner. The topic for today's discussion is a very recently concluded international summit, that is BRICS. This session is presented by Anshum Verma. I'm a practicing advocate in High Court of Delhi. Plus, I have a teaching experience of more than 10 years. So, guys, Narendra Modi, our Prime Minister, has recently visited South Africa to conclude one important summit, that is BRICS. You can link this topic with GS2, government policy and intervention, and also international groupings. So, first, we will know about what is BRICS. So basically, BRICS is the acronym for five nation. It stands for Brazil, Russia, India, India, China, and South Africa. This acronym is known as BRICS. So the 15th BRICS summit was very recently hosted by South Africa, and the host city was Johannesburg. Now, with the backdrop of changing geopolitical scenarios and change in the global economic dynamics, like there is a threat of a new Cold War between US and China on one end, then USA increasing its area of influence in European nation, and then to counter the Western countries, there are group of countries that are standing against USA. BRICS plays a very important role. So this is the first summit that has been conducted in an offline manner, that is in person, since 2019, because this was again delayed every year because of the ongoing pandemic. So the theme for 15th BRICS Summit is BRICS and Africa, partnership for mutually accelerated growth, sustainable development, and inclusive multilateralism. So this was the theme for 15th BRICS Summit. Now, before coming to the highlights of the BRICS Summit, let us very quickly understand that what is this BRICS all about? What is the origin and what is the background of this organization? So BRICS is an acronym for five nations: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. This term was initially coined as BRIC, where South Africa was not included in the initially. This term was coined by a British economist who used to work in a very prestigious economic research institute, that is Goldman Sachs. So in 2001, he coined this term BRIC, which represents all the top developing nations in the world. So these countries are seen as the leaders of the developing nation, which can present the demands and the aspiration of the developing countries in front of the developed world. Then this BRICS was later expanded in 2010 when South Africa was invited to become the member. Before this, the BRIC countries have started meeting, let's say unofficially, like there was at many fronts, foreign ministers used to meet, some defense ministers used to meet. So it started very slowly officially, and then later on it got expanded to BRIC in 2010. Finally, South Africa was the partner of under BRIC. Then what is the relevance of BRICS countries? So together, all these five developing nations, they contribute almost 41% of the global GDP. Then they contribute, sorry, 41% of the global population. Then they contribute 24% of the global GDP. And then all these five countries, they takes care of about 16% of the global trade. So they have a high dependence in the international market. Then which country will be the host of each BRIC summit? This is decided with the rotating order in the acronym itself. Like, for example, this year in 2023, the summit was hosted by South Africa. Next year, the 20 in year 24, Brazil will host the summit, and then in 25, Russia, and then in 2026, India will host the summit. The last summit that India has hosted in BRICS was in 2021, and in 21, basically this was a online summit because the world was facing the global pandemic at this time. Then there are certain initiatives under BRICS. For example, BRICS has its own bank called as NDB, New Development Bank. This bank was established as the sixth BRICS summit in 2014. The headquarters of this bank is located in Shanghai, China. So what is the purpose of forming such a bank? Basically, to help all those developing countries and especially BRIC nations to develop infrastructure projects, to give easy concessional loans so that they can build more resilient infrastructure in their country, more resilient as well as sustainable infrastructure in their country. Then under BRICS, there is a concept of contingent reserve arrangement. Again, this was also signed in 2014, where if any BRIC member is facing short of balance of payment, that means their international trade, import exports are hampering because of any economic international activity, maybe the rise and fall in the foreign exchange market. So this contingent reserve arrangement provides an additional support and financial stability to all the BRIC nations so that it can help them to stabilize their balance of payment issue. Then in BRICS, there is one customs agreement. That means all five nations will support each other by easing out the trade restrictions. By easing out the trade restrictions so that more trade can happen without any hindrance in terms of the customs. Then in 2021, when India has hosted this summit, there was a collaboration that was signed between all five BRIC nations where they will be developing a BRIC remote sensing satellite constellation. That means it will help in more research in the space. So in this constellation, that is, constellation is a group of satellite that will be collecting data from our planet Earth. So Gaofen 6, Xian 2, which are both developed by China. So China has two satellites. CBERS 4, that is developed by China and Brazil. Canopus 5 type, which is developed by Russia, and ResourceSat 2, ResourceSat 2A, which is developed by India. So these six satellite will give, there will be a data sharing, like they are the Earth observation satellite. So they will be sharing the data among each other. Then let us very quickly understand that what are the highlights of this 15th BRICS Summit. So 15th BRICS Summit is marked with expanding its members from 5 to 11. That means this year 6 new members have been added in BRICS. Now, it is also seen as like how the influence of America is falling in the international front, and all the countries are coming out of the Western alliances. This BRICS is seen as an better alternative for the Western alliances. So, what all countries have been there in this, like which countries have been added in the BRICS? So there are 6 countries: Egypt, Iran, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Ethiopia, and Argentina. So you will see from each continent there is one country that has been added into BRICS. That means now the group's representation is from Middle East, from Africa. Like earlier, it was only South Africa representing the Africa in BRICS. Now you have Ethiopia as well. Then in South America, other than Brazil, Argentina is also a member. So these countries, the BRICS members have accepted the expansion of BRICS, but they will become a full-time member from 1st January 2024. That means the next year summit, the summit of 2024 in Brazil, the summit of 2024 in Brazil will be their first formal summit under BRICS. Then originally the BRIC member had 2 things in common. That means, like if you remember the earlier discussion in this video, there were 2 things in common. First, large economy and high potential growth rate. That means the BRIC countries, they are the representation of all developing nations, and these are all those economies which are at the top of their developing charts. That means in developing countries, they are the highest developing countries in this side of the world. That is the developing side of the world. And they have a high potential growth rate. However, this expanded BRIC 11, now BRIC will be known as the BRIC 11. It is less coherent. That means some of the countries in BRICS, that is the expanded BRICS, are going through crisis. Like Iran is going through crisis, Ethiopia is going through crisis, and then Egypt is also struggling. So some of them are going through a deep crisis, and then others are also on the verge of crisis. So that means the BRICS has come out of the nomenclature of the group of developing countries. Now it is no more a developing countries. The agenda are now beyond economics. So what are the agenda? So basically, what India takes out of this BRICS summit. Now guys, this was the first summit after our standoff in Ladakh with China. This was the first time where Indian Prime Minister and Chinese President were standing in front of them. And very recently, government has also given a statement that both the leaders had talked to resolve border disputes. So there were some kind of positive relations that has been set up with this summit. So all the bilateral talks between Prime Minister of India and President of China have agreed to set up efforts for disengagement of troops and de-escalation of tensions along the LAC. And then obviously India played a key role in drafting the membership criteria and promoting the strategic partnership among the new entrants. India has a very good role to play here. Like uh, almost every country that has become the part of BRIC, somewhere or the other, you will see that India has a very good relation. Like for example, with Egypt. Egypt, we have recently visited Egypt. Like when Prime Minister was returning from USA, he has stopped in Egypt for a 1 day visit, where he has discussed some improvement in bilateral relation. With Iran, we are building up our investments and trade, and we have already signed strategic partnership with Iran. Then Saudi is again one of our largest importers of oil. UAE is the third largest trade, with which the third largest trade that India carries out. Even Ethiopia and Argentina, the relations with India are continuously growing. So that means India has expanded its network of allies in BRICS. Then sees BRICS as a non-Western rather than an anti-Western group. That means India see this as not a counter to US but a engagement of the Western countries. Now this is how we portray. However, there are countries like China and Russia. They see all these initiatives, like for example, they see SCO, they see BRICS as a international arena which is anti-Western in nature. So, Indian Prime Minister has also proposed to establish a BRIC space exploration consortium. That means all the BRIC members, the BRIC 11, will together collaborate, and with the collaboration, they will advance in the field of space technology. Then there is one more important internationally India-led initiative, that is the International Big Cat Alliance. Basically, International Big Cat Alliance was launched this year in the month of April, where India has launched its tiger census, the fourth tiger census, and India has completed 50 years of your Project Tiger. So this under International Big Cat in Alliance, there will be the target to conserve all important 7 cat species in each of the respective countries, that are 11 now in BRICS. Then what are the other highlights of this summit? So in context of geopolitics, this summit gives Russia a new chance to showcase itself. So BRICS discussions are perceived to carry a counter Western perspective. That means like countries like China, Russia, they want to show this counter Western perspective. So all the Western countries have tried to isolate Russia after the Ukraine conflict. But BRICS becomes a important deliberation to gain importance. That means BRICS has provided that platform which Russia was missing from quite a period of time. And then guys, there was also a debate where Russia is a member of International Court of Justice, and we know that South Africa is a member of International Court of Justice, and so and Russia, your Putin, Vladimir Putin is alleged of the war crimes. Okay, so there is an arrest warrant that has been issued against him, but the problem is then South Africa do not want to distort their relations with Russia, so they have requested Putin not to visit in this summit. And same thing, the same pressure will be on India. And now it has been clear that the Russian government has made it clear in an announcement that Putin won't be visiting in the G20 summit. Then United Nations reforms. India as well as other BRIC members also supports the idea of bringing new reforms in United Nations and including Security Council to make it more democratic, more represented, more representative and effective and efficient. Like right now, the United Nations Security Council, the P5 members are not the right representation of the present world. So India and other BRIC members support this idea of bringing reforms in United Nations. Then climate change. So all the big BRIC members have agreed to address the challenges posed by the climate change. All of these countries, that is the BRIC 11, they believe in adopting affordable, sustainable transition to low carbon and emission economy. So all these five nations, they have called developed countries to lead by examples and support all the developing countries towards such transition. So basically, the BRICS countries have retracted their earlier demand for providing funds to developing nations by the developed countries. Then BRIC nations has also opposed all the trade barriers which are imposed by certain developing countries in the pretext of tackling climate change. Like for example, common border adjustment mechanism, which has been very recently introduced by European Union to tackle climate change. It is a kind of a trade barrier. It is a kind of a trade barrier that will prohibit all these developing countries in expanding their business in the developed countries on the pretext of climate change. So all the BRICS countries have stand together to this. So guys, this is it for this session. I hope you enjoyed the information provided for the BRICS. Then if you enjoy the content, then do not forget to give a like on this video and share this video with all your friends. Then if you are planning to subscribe to a new UPSC CSC subscription for 2024, you can join Shriram IS at Unacademy with this code SRIRAMS. This code will give you a flat 20% off on all your subscription. The subscription of Shriram IS at Unacademy is very holistic in nature. It includes prelims, mains, interview, optionals, answer writing, mentorship. Almost everything that a UPSC aspirant needs is there in this subscription. So thank you very much. See you in the next video.